All right, there we go. All right, so Anthony and myself and Allison are the kind of co-leads for this education team. I was thinking, Anthony and Allison, you let me know if we want to do something different, that we could use this a little working group-esque to kind of go over the website material. Does that sound good? Or do you have anything you want to talk about from the webinar part of things first?
I think that sounds
Yes,
good.
Alison.
Okay, all right, perfect. So
I will say the one thing I did ask Mahmood, and I think it'd be helpful if he's going to work on it, trying to get an option to have it add to your calendar for the webinars, because I do think that would potentially increase participation in webinars, because I think it's sometimes hard to remember to always add them on yourself.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And then I also thought the same about the meeting today. All right, can you guys see here where I have like up the Google Doc for the education committee? Okay. I'm going to try to see if I can make it larger. Okay, so the idea for the website is that we basically just want to curate things that are already existing and put them on the website in a way that is more accessible and easier for folks to be able to use. So we created this Google Doc, and I think we put it out a while ago, but we didn't get a lot of leeway on it. So far we haven't made huge amounts of movement on the website, but we do have an outline of what our goals are and some resources to be able to utilize. So I can send the Google Doc out again today after the meeting to everyone who kind of signed up as being interested in the education committee. If anybody is on the talk and you didn't fill out the Google Doc to be on the committee, like at the consortium meeting, then please just let me know. And I can add you to that as well. But the idea is we do also have a box link. It is through through WashU, but I believe everyone should have access to it. Anthony, you've been able to get on and use it readily as long as you had the link. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, perfect. So the idea would be we can kind of use this Google Doc as a way to keep track of the materials that we have and to help organize it. And then the box would be where if we have something that is not just a website or a link, that we can put it in the box and then be able to upload it to the website either as a link or a PDF or whatever we need to do. So kind of those two resources to be able to put things in. We're asking that if you place materials on the Google Doc that you just put your name or your initials with it so that we have somebody to reach out to if we have questions about it or about its use or anything like that. And that if we need to discuss it as a group, like, do we feel like this is appropriate for the site or not, we can come to the person who suggested it and have those conversations. So we've suggested the below categories to kind of fit materials under. So there would be initial link like resources for providers, resources for patients and families. And then you can see these are kind of outlined in the box as well: resources for research, resources for patients, resources for educators, and then resources for healthcare providers. And then if you click into each one of these, I have another box lined out for where we would put like webinars, guidelines, or publications. And I believe that I did get that done for all of them. All right, so then that we can kind of sort them as we go. And then I will update this because it looks like I didn't get C and D put in there. And so then under each one, you can just write. So if you had a protocol, you could just write under here like WashU protocol, Hefkin, and then it would be in the box and we would know the appropriate person to be able to kind of reach out to. And then the idea is that we would review them as the leadership team, and then also we can review them as a group after we kind of narrow them down to the things that would be appropriate. Any questions so far with that? Do these seem like categories that make sense for people? Are there any additional things people would recommend or thoughts that anyone has about sort of our initial organization? Allison or Anthony, either of you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that definitely, I think the questions that we get the most are really like exactly like these, starting, how do you start a program? How do you start an OTC program? What kind of consents do you use? I mean, one thing we could consider adding would be, I guess we have protocols and consents, because I think consents is another big question people ask. And then it might be nice to have a separate thing about like different research that is out there. If like maybe there's a research program that's collecting ovarian tissue and XYZ, to be able to have that as a place where people can like read about what research is available if they are interested in or able to like join research
Oh,
protocols.
so you mean as opposed to not like literature that's out there, but just like
Correct.
research opportunities to join?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Like we have all of this tissue. Is there a place I can like, donate it or join a research
Yeah, and
protocol
I think
for
we
it?
could work with the research team on that, because that seems like materials they're
Yeah.
trying to get out there. And
Mhm.
so we'll just have a place for them
Yeah, exactly.
to be able to use that. Okay, great. So I mean, I think what we need now is we just need people who would be interested in going through the Oncofertility website itself, and like any materials that we already have that we just need to curate into a different place. And then also just getting people to give us ideas of things that they use outside of the Oncofertility Consortium website, that we can add as far as resources. So we had sent a link out before. We didn't get a lot of information back. I don't know, those of you that are on the call that aren't like the 3 leadership folks, do you have ideas of things to help just get people involved in putting the material in? Like anything that would help to say like, oh, I can throw a few things in here, or just get people's attention to send in things.
I wonder if it would make sense, now that we have a little more like organization of what we want this to be, to see if anyone would be willing to like sign up to say, I will be in charge of going through the website and looking, like doing all the stuff about starting a program or OTC or whatever and collecting that. So it's not so daunting, because it's kind of scary to be like to do a
Yeah.
whole big library. But if you could take a small chunk, like I'd be happy to, like have the starting a program. And then at the meeting, we can have people maybe join those individual groups. And then, because eventually we're probably also going to want to create some materials too. And so that could be a place that the people who are kind of in charge of updating and creating the starting a program or the OTC or the TTC. I think that maybe that might be more manageable to have like people be in charge of like smaller chunks.
Yeah,
You know.
that makes sense. I mean, I would be willing to do the OTC and TTC, because I had to do a lot of that to like start the program to build those.
Mhm.
And
And I'd
so,
be willing to do starting a program.
okay.
Yeah.
Anyone have interest in like taking one of the other sections and just sort of starting a baseline of material to put in?
This is Katie. I could look at resources for patients and families.
Okay, great.
And I know, thank you for showing what you set up in Box. Is that, would be kind of helpful to have a template or a format that you want this information provided in?
So I think that it's going to probably be different because of the different materials that are out there. So my assumption, and we can edit this at all, was that if there already is a website, then we would just provide the link and it would link directly to the website, right? I think if we have protocols and those kind of things, I'm kind of back and forth. Like, one, do we think there would be any issue, like that the universities would have an issue with us putting the protocol online? Or do you think we need to have something that says like, you know, Holly Hefkin has agreed to share her protocol. You can email her at this. I just wasn't sure if we would get any pushback from individual universities about putting like an IRB protocol PDF on the internet.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess that's something to ask because I think maybe there is some already on there. Like I think UPMC has on the old website at least, you could like download their TTC protocol essentially.
Yeah.
So it might be university specific, or it might be one of those things you put on and ask for forgiveness later or something.
Right. Right. But I think so a lot of those would depend on what the material comes in, right? So if we have to link a PDF or a website or an article, I think at this point we will just take them in whatever format people have them in to kind of get the initial information, and then we can see how it looks unless people have other thoughts.
So I'm on the education committee for the Navigator subcommittee as part of the Oncofertility Consortium, and we're currently collecting educational materials that are specifically meant for new navigators who are starting out in that position. Just as like a subcategory of really useful educational materials for somebody who is coordinating a fertility program or navigating a fertility program. And I can talk to our group next week and see if we can somehow just link it to what you have here as well. I feel like that is a fairly valuable chunk of information that it's hard to find a source for that specifically. There's a lot of education about OTC and about TTC, and I think it'd be really useful to have it consolidated into a specific location. But it's as somebody who's still fairly new to figuring out how to be in this position, it's very diverse. Like you're pulling things in from so many different places, and it would be useful, I think, to have a place to direct new navigators as well on the in this area, so they know how, for example, to figure out how to assess fertility risk. Just things that it's hard to figure out how to do on your own.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because honestly, most of the navigators, there are some adult navigators, but most of the navigators are going to be pediatric or at least like AYA where they're doing both adult and peds. So it makes sense to have that information on the PAC website. I think as long as the navigators would be fine with that because I think it's just like a central place for people to look. And we want this to be user friendly. We want people to actually use it and be like a good resource so people aren't reinventing the wheel every single time here. And another thing I thought about too adding is, and maybe Anthony could look into this because he just did that webinar too, would be like resources in other languages where that could be like, that could probably be under the like a separate consent or whatever. But I think having if anyone has made a OTC information about OTC in Spanish or whatever, like different language, to have that available for people to use too.
Do we know that that Michigan State and or the Oncofertility Consortium will allow us to link out and away from?
Yes.
The OFC
we
website?
asked that question in the beginning, and they are agreeable to that.
Great.
That's a great question though, because I had the same one.
Yeah. And then the vetting that needs to, so if we are linking outside, what level of vetting of content, and because that's an endorsement.
Our thoughts would be, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Nope, that was it.
Okay, our initial thoughts were that, you know, we're initially asking the person who recommends it to vet it from their standpoint, right? So this is something that I personally would use clinically. And then from there, then the leadership team and or the committee, depending on availability and such, then we would vet it from our standpoint, as a committee that we are agreeable to that. Do we feel like that is good, like a good vetting process, or do we think we should think through that more?
I feel like that's pretty good. And then if we talked about doing like meetings, subcommittee meetings,
Mhm.
so that could be kind of one of the subcommittee meeting, um, you know, tasks would be, you know, every 3 or 4 months, we go over the new materials and kind of, I don't know, vote on it or not, but like just say, like,
Yeah,
you know, maybe say, agree that that it looks good. And if anyone has any concerns about it, maybe people kind of should, the night before, we would ask people to just kind of peek through, and then we could talk about any concerns people had with the materials, like at the meeting. Or we could do a working meeting, kind of depends on how much materials we have, because you guys just pull them up real quick and look at stuff too, but it might be nice to have people to look at it beforehand.
yeah.
So will there be a place to submit these materials that people are proposing? Where do they submit them to?
You
Is
would
that at
submit
Google
them to
Docs?
the box. So
Okay.
to the box here, or if it's just a website, then you can submit it on this Google Doc.
Good.
So we would put out this Google Doc. If it's a website, you can just put the link on here. And then if it's something that needs to be uploaded, then you would then add that to the appropriate place in the box.
Mhm. Okay, and I'm here. Would love to help in any way. I've just never done, never added anything to websites and things. So happy to either join in on, maybe which one was the families that Katie's doing? Maybe join in with her, unless you
on
just
that
want
with
one
Katie.
person to do them.
No, I think it's anything that gets us started, I think is good. And I mean, everybody else can, like, if you're looking for something in your group, right? But then you come across something that would fit in the other places, like, please feel free to add it. But I think Allison's right, that at least gives us a target. So you're like, okay, I have this role and I'm going to do that. But definitely if you have things that fit into the other spots, then we will go ahead and do that. Okay, and I think it's 12:03, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But I think this was good. I will send out an email with the 2 links for this Google Doc and for the box link as well, so that people can kind of get started on that. And then I think Allison and Anthony and myself were looking towards dates for a subcommittee meeting. So we'll put that out there too, once we kind of figure out when would be a good time to do that. But maybe giving us a little bit of time for people to work on this would be helpful first. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to add or say before we log off? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.